thought I'd... So, dude, I'll wait a minute or so more here and then see if anybody comes on. They come on, but I'm going to have this on my channel anyway, so we'll post it there. But this was an unannounced live, so we're doing a drive and talk. And what I wanted to talk about today was a couple of things that led me to thinking about making this video. The first story was whether or not reporters can release stories at the Pentagon and without the Department of what they call themselves now, the Department of War, approving it, whether it's classified or unclassified. And I don't really I don't care about that. I think the government's shown way too much deference to the media as it is over the years, and have to report to them every day and have press conferences. And I think in this day and age, with technology being what it is, I think the government could take it directly to us and just take the media, or what I call a middleman, right out of it. And then we can judge for ourselves. We don't need a media that leans one way or the other to tell us what to think. We can take the information from the government and do with it what we will. And on top of that, the media can still report whatever they wanted from it. But that's just me. But then I started thinking about these other stories that I read about over the last 2 weeks. And what we have is, as we all know, back in 2022, Putin rolled into Ukraine. I think he needed something to do, and I think he wishes, for my opinion, my humble opinion, and I think he wishes for the old Soviet bloc to be back, and he rolled into Ukraine because Ukraine didn't have NATO protection. They weren't a member of NATO. They had applied, and I think I'm not sure, but they didn't get approved at some point along the way. And so he rolled into there, and it was convenient under a pretext of whatever he came with. And so they've been in there. And so now the U.S. has, roughly, and it can fluctuate, let's say 85,000 troops in Europe, with the bulk of that being in England and Germany and Italy. And then you also have troops in Spain a little bit, in Turkey a little bit, and that's a mix of everything. I know we have Navy over there, and we have Army and Air Force. The Marine Corps stuff is probably at the embassies mainly, or they're adjunct, but primarily the Marine Corps is in the Pacific. So he's been at war with little Ukraine here, and he can't defeat them. And that's been going on well over 3 years now, I think. And so recently, I think it was September 9th, they flew some drones into NATO territory. I believe it was Poland, I think. I'll double check that. And NATO forces shot those down. And then the other day, they sent 3 fighter jets into NATO territory. I think it was in Estonia. And there's a bay out there adjacent to Finland. And so they had to send fighter jets up to escort them out. So what happened here was that both those incidents, because it was in NATO territory, that invoked what they call Article 4, or a meeting where they come together and have a consultation of the country that was affected, whether they needed help. And so Article 5 is the one that says, that's the big one. That's the main one that says attack on one of those NATO countries is attack on us all. So that brings me to the question of the day is, looking at Russia and what they're doing, how much do Americans want our U.S. forces involved in any issue that could hypothetically or potentially erupt with a NATO country over there, say Poland. Poland borders Ukraine, I believe. Okay, and you've got the Balkans up there, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, right? They're kind of there by themselves. And it just looks like Putin's poking and prodding and testing to see what NATO will do and how we respond to it, right? So, I think he's crazy. My opinion is he's crazy. And if he does try to roll into one of these countries, how much should the U.S. be involved in that? Should it just be air support and dominate the sky? Should it be air and ground? Air-grounded Navy up there, the water off of the Balkans? Have our Navy involved there as well? Should we carry the bulk of that? Or should we let the countries in Europe carry the bulk of it with their ground forces, defending their territory? And we give them air support. And we invoke more sanctions, although I'm not sure we could put more sanctions on Russia than what we do already, but it doesn't seem to really have a stranglehold on them, or if it does, we don't hear about it. So is that worth the United States military going in and putting our troops on the ground and digging in and fighting this back? Or do we give them support and keeping our oath to NATO, but more so with the air forces, the naval forces, and drones, intelligence, satellite imagery? Is that the same? And do we owe them the bulk of ground support? Because I think the U.S. has been carrying the world on a lot of things lately in recent years, since I was a kid. We're always the leader, and we've got troops all around the world. They've remained in Germany. We have some in Spain. They've remained in England. We've got them in Okinawa. We've got them in Korea. And a lot of other places. So how much should we be involved in that? What's your opinion on that? Secondly, when you look at Taiwan, and Taiwan has died down a little bit. I got a polar seltzer water here. Or if it's died down, or if it hasn't died down, then we haven't heard about it. But when Biden was in, you heard a lot about how China was encroaching on the boundary around Taiwan, and they would send ships and planes in like as a drill and just testing to see what Taiwan would do and how they work. And now, because of that, the U.S. is opening up bases again in the Philippines. They moved troops from Okinawa to Guam, it sounds like, a few of them. They're trying to put kind of a half of a ring out there on the Pacific to deal with China. I know they opened a base, started cutting back the jungle on an airfield in the northern end of the Philippines that it wasn't in use when I was in the late 80s and early 90s. Subic Bay was there, and Clark Air Base was there, but there was nothing really further north base-wise that had any prominent personnel to speak of. And now they've cut the jungle back and they're reinstituting that. So if Taiwan goes down, here's the other scenario. I think we made an agreement with them back in the 50s somewhere that the U.S. would assist them, and I think this is when we had a stance of stopping the spread of communism around the world, which I think our policy has changed. We thought it didn't work in Vietnam, and I don't think it worked real well in Korea, and it's a different world now that we're looking at, and what Taiwan. And so how much do we owe Taiwan? We've got Okinawa. We still have a lot of troops on Okinawa, and I think a total of 40,000 throughout all of Japan. Troops throughout that region. So how much do we owe Taiwan if something goes down with China there? Do we owe them the full ground troops? Do we owe them air support? Do we just give them weapons and let them fight it their own, which they would get demolished and eviscerated pretty quick, I think? What do we owe them? How much should we be involved in Taiwan? You know, under Biden, he said, yeah, he'd put ground troops on Taiwan, and later that day, after he said that, the White House backtracked on that, backpedaled, and they've always been intentionally vague as to how much we would get involved in Taiwan. So, do we owe that to them? Do we owe Taiwan involvement where American lives would be severely at risk? Or do we owe them some air support, some naval support, or anything at all? Just give them some weapons and say, have at it. That's what we're looking at, because we got people in the world that just can't seem to behave and be good human beings. They have to invade other countries. And that's the other thing, is that the U.S. has always been the policeman of the world and taken on the bulk of a lot of things in the world. And I don't think that we should be the policeman of the world. Now, there are, congressmen and senators over the years that have argued, boy, if we didn't police the world, you'd have no idea what kind of shape the world would be in if we weren't there to settle things down. Well, maybe that's the way it should go. Let that part of the world deal with whatever's coming at them. But I don't think U.S. lives being lost on NATO land, or at least ground troops being put on NATO land, and for Taiwan, I don't see that. If the world says, if the universe says that Taiwan's going to be taken over by China and that's just the way it's going to be, then I guess that's just the way it's going to be. But is it worth American lives being lost? Boy, it's hard for me to get there. I'm not getting there anymore with things like this. That American lives should be lost in Europe. Well, we did it in World War II, and who knows where Hitler would have gone. Speculation was that Hitler would have, if we hadn't stopped him over there, he'd have gone across the water and taken England, and then we would have been the next stop. I think that's what a history teacher told me once in high school, or told the class once in high school. And so all those Americans that died in Europe, stopping him, was it worth it? Would we be Germany right now? Would we be a puppet country of Germany right now had we not done that? I don't know. I don't know that we would have. I think coming across all that water to try to invade our country would be tough. I think Americans would have picked up arms, because we already had lots of guns, and we'd have taken it to them. So I don't know. I don't know that Germany would have been able to do that. So back to today's issue. So back to Europe, back to NATO and Russia. So you have Putin's poking and prodding at NATO, seeing what they'll do and how they'll respond. Sending drones in, and these three fighter jets he sent in were all armed. So he's just testing us, seeing what's going to happen. Is this like what they do when they fly up close to Alaska and test us and we escort them out? And I got to believe we do that to them over near the Russian coast over there, probably Kamchatka and all that. Is that all this is going to be, or is it going to turn into something bigger? And if so, when? When do you think it'll go down? I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I do know that I think he's crazy, and I think he wants to do a lot more before he leaves this earth. I can't believe that he's well. I can't believe his health is good. And I know there were reports before that that he was ailing, but I think that was maybe during COVID. Who knows what it was. So those are kind of my thoughts today on the drive and talk. So what do you think, and how much should we get involved? Do you think that reporters can't publish anything from the military without it being approved through the Department of War, classified or unclassified? You think that's right? Or do you think that's a step on, the First Amendment, freedom of the press? But again, I always looked at the media as printing for sensationalism or to a particular leaning one way or the other. So I might be a little biased in that. I don't care what they do to the media, but share your thoughts on what you think on all of this. Europe and what our potential involvement could be. Taiwan and what our potential involvement could be. Whether or not the reporters should have all their stories cleared by the Department of Defense, Department of War now, prior to being published. That's the latest thing coming down. All right, that's all I have for you today on this drive and talk. But let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching.